Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in description below. Today we've been able to get breaking news from inside of Belarus, as it appears that Lukashenko has won the election in a fairly rigged election by 90%, and has already announced the construction of an Hypersonic intermediate-range ballistic missile launch facility within the area of eastern Belarus, close to the town of Orsha. We have also been able to get some significant information as well from NATO that appears to be showing us that the path to war may be firmly fixed in place, as NATO will now be providing classified information to war industry or leading war industries within the West to be able to allow them to expect what kind of products the West will be highly expecting here in the near future and to begin production of those as soon as possible. This comes at the exact same time as a Russian and Italian aircraft had a standoff today near to the area of the Baltic Sea, as an F-35 was intercepted by a Russian aircraft and appears to have had a very tense and close standoff in the skies of the Baltic. We've also been able to hear that U.S. support has continued unfettered, as several 747s have arrived in Poland over the past day, and we have been able to see that U.S. support for the military in Ukraine has continued, and most likely will continue well on into the future. We have also been able to see inside of the state of Ukraine, inside the occupied Russian Federation, a significant radar system was destroyed today, along with the Iranians exercising words of caution to their proxy forces, as they are now scared that the United States may directly begin to bomb Iran if hostile actions by the proxies continue. And in South Korea, we've been able to hear that Yoon has been indicted for insurrection. We have a massive load of news today, and getting on to our first and most important piece of news, we have been able to hear that President Lukashenko has announced that they are building an Hypersonic intermediate-range ballistic missile launcher inside of Belarus. And we were able to hear that the Russian Hypersonic will be in Belarus from day to day, according to Lukashenko, who has proclaimed himself the president of the country, although he's a dictator, and we'll get to that here in a second. But nevertheless, he is considering placing the missile complex somewhere near the Russian Federation, since it's a common weapon. Basically, in short, since we're being given these by the Russians, we're going to put it close to Russia. And he said, there, closer to Smolensk. I dream so. We'll see there. You need a certain distance. It's bad when your targets are very close. And he's speaking about the use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile against the West, or really against NATO, and it appears that they are going to be putting the facility somewhere around the city of Orsha, which actually was a large part of Operation Bagration back in 1944 during World War II, but since then has been completely unnotable in terms of significance to really anyone in the world. But nevertheless, that is where they plan on putting the intermediate-range ballistic missile launch site, and it does appear that the Belarusian president is making it quite clear at this point that Belarus does possess nuclear-capable and possibly nuclear-armed intermediate-range ballistic missiles that could be used and targeted against Western nations and Western forces. This comes right on the heels of him winning the election in a landslide, and of fair rigging. Everyone knows that elections have to be fair, and the election was fairly rigged to where you'd win. It's simple as that, and we were able to hear that Lukashenko did win a nice, good, reasonable sum of 87.6% of the vote. The people of Belarus truly are enamored with this man and how much he can rig elections and lie about the people loving him. They actually love him a lot for the fact that he'll lie about it a great deal. But nevertheless, we also got to see that Lukashenko went and voted himself, and it appears that his dog also pissed on the wall, which we can see right there. Of course, we all know that the votes go straight into a shredder and then they come up with the numbers later. But we were able to see once again that already anti-Lukashenko protests began to break out in the streets, of course, because no one believes that this is a legitimate election, and it really isn't by every single measure. But nevertheless, it doesn't stop Lukashenko from saying that it is and continuing to act as the president of Belarus, although he's never been elected really by anyone, and this is the supposed 7th term that he's been elected in a landslide in. Nevertheless, while he is trying to make it seem that Belarus is strong, the Russian Federation is having a bit of a major issue with that out in the area of the Baltic Sea, where we were able to see that today a Russian aircraft of an unknown type, unfortunately, did intercept an Italian F-35. This F-35 here is from the Italian Air Force and is currently a part of Operation Baltic Sentry. It appears to have gotten somewhat close to the area of Kaliningrad, and the Su-30, I'm assuming, was sent up to intercept it. Some people are probably wondering, wait a minute, the F-35 F-35 is stealth, how did the Russians know where it was? Generally, the practice with stealth aircraft, at least in these kinds of situations, is that if it's not wartime, the transponders are turned on. So that way it doesn't cause a great deal of fear and panic, because simply the fact is that the Russians cannot track these things. So if the transponders get turned off, the Russians are immediately going to assume that it's breaching Russian airspace, and they will practically believe that it's a state of war at that point. So for this reason, the transponder is left on. And that's why the Russians were able to vector an aircraft to intercept this F-35 in this video. But here is the clip. And that's the end of the clip, but still a fairly interesting one to see, and once again showing us that Operation Baltic Sentry is having a fairly large presence within the area of the Baltic Sea. We have been able to hear, however, that things seem to be not going that well in the background. And while we saw that F-35 pilot and the Su-30 pilot did have a little friendly wave there at the end of the video, the actual diplomatic tensions in between the Russian Federation and NATO are starkly rising, at least according to what we're understanding behind the scenes. The United States has made it fairly clear that all NATO countries, as soon as possible, need to be able to raise their military spending to around 5% of their GDP, far above the 2% quota that's actually laid out by NATO. Another concerning and interesting thing that we also have to put out as well today, in a bit more of a serious note, is that NATO is going to be sharing classified information with war industry throughout the entirety of the Western world to get them into a wartime mindset, according to Root, who is the Secretary General of NATO at the moment. But according to the information that we have, NATO is planning to share classified military information with the war industry. To explain in a sense what this really means, it's wanting to show the war industry that war is highly likely. The classified intelligence that's going to be given will be Russian troop buildups, information about what's going on inside the Russian central government, the kind of discussions that they're having, the sort of actions that it appears they're taking in the background, the massive buildup of troops inside of the Leningrad military district, and the mass amount that are currently in Kaliningrad. All of this will most likely be shown in a more revealing form of way, due to the release of this classified information, to war industry, so that way war industry can start to understand that it may be a profitable venture and a risk worth taking to begin to ramp up war production, as the use of those war materials will become highly likely in the future, and the West would need to be ready for whatever is coming around the corner. That appears to be highly likely the case of the information that they're going to be sharing. They're not going to be sharing any technological expertise. The war industry actually has more technological expertise on military equipment than the military has, as a matter of fact, considering that they are the ones who actually have to develop and manufacture new technological and innovational breakthroughs. So for this reason, it's most likely going to be information on what the situation is right now between the Russian Federation and NATO that will spur the war industry into this wartime mindset, because it appears that we're almost on the verge of war. Speaking of the verge of war, it seems that the Iranians are very scared of being on the verge of war with the United States, as we are now hearing that the Iranian government is now ordering caution to all of its proxy forces because of the President of the United States' largely brash actions in the Middle East. Iran has ordered its proxy forces to exercise caution, fearing an existential threat from the President of the United States. The commanders of the Iranian-backed militia have been told to maintain defensive positions and avoid provocation towards U.S. forces or allies. Iran is also conducting a large-scale operation to identify Israeli spies amid concerns of infiltration in high-ranking offices. It does appear, at least at the moment, that the Iranians are incredibly concerned and scared about possible U.S. actions in the Middle East. This has already been made fairly clear that the President of the United States is incredibly aggressive against the Islamic Republic of Iran and treats them as a national threat. And for this reason, we are seeing that the Iranians are now telling the proxy forces to stand down and stand by to see what's going to happen. But moving on from that and into South Korea, we've also been able to hear that one guy is not going to be able to stand down, stand by, as it appears that criminal proceedings are still moving against Yoon Suk Yeol and Yoon Suk Yeol has just been indicted for insurrection just a short while ago. Once again, this is a continued saga of the Yoon Suk Yeol insurrection attempt that happened last year, and it appears that the National Assembly is still moving forward with an attempt to imprison Yoon Suk Yeol on the charges of insurrection, due to the declaration of martial law that happened a little while ago. But moving on out of North Korea and back into the area of Eastern Europe, we have also been able to hear that the United States of America has been continuing its support to Poland, much to the dismay of mainstream news companies and much to the dismay of many who drink Kool-Aid. We have been able to see that the U.S. air bridge supporting Ukraine continued this weekend, with 3 U.S.-loaded U.S. Transcom 747s landing at Rezhal International Airport, the gateway for Western aid headed to Ukraine, and the last one, CMB 338, touched down in Rezhal only moments ago, according to the post that was made by OSINT Technical, which literally just came out about 20 minutes before we started recording this video. But we can see all 3 separate flights here. Every single one of them is transporting U.S. military aid and cargo to the area of Poland to be transferred into Ukraine. In short, military support for Ukraine has not ceased beyond what a lot of people are saying out there at this point, and will continue well on into the future. Meanwhile, inside of the state of Ukraine, we've been able to see that the Ukrainians may not need that much military support, because it seems that the Russians are a little bit stretched at this point, a little thin, because of all the losses that they've been taking. We got a tiny Rodnik section right here. I don't know what this is. It looks kind of like a UAZ 469 that has a brush guard on it, and then there's abominations further back, an ATV and what might be a Buhanka? I can't tell. I cannot even tell on that one, but it looks like it might be a Buhanka that's really been, like, messed up badly. But still, the Russians are running low on equipment. It's just not going well for them. That's the simple answer, and the economy's doing bad, the military's doing bad, everything's doing badly, and it's just very sad to see, indeed. Actually, it's pretty nice. But moving on down into the area of Novokakhovka and Vasilivka, we were able to see that a Russian radar was destroyed in this area. Apparently, it's called a Krasuka, and it appears that this is some form of a counter-battery radar that was hit and destroyed in this area today, meaning that the Russians are losing a vital eye on where Ukrainian artillery may be firing from, so that way they can conduct counter-fire missions and attempt to destroy the Ukrainian artillery pieces. All in all, it appears that today was a pretty decent day. That's actually all the news that we have right now. I've got to thank each and every one of y'all so much once again for watching, and if y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon if you want to. No hard feelings if you don't, but I gotta give a massive thanks to everyone who currently is on Patreon and supporting this channel, because y'all help to make these video projects possible. And so a massive thanks to all of you once again, and I will see you all in the next one. Good luck and take care.